need a high-end designer or a lot of money to get a luxe look. Be your own interior designer.
This is Affordable Interior Design, the podcast.
Here's your host, Betsy Helmuth.
The first question comes all the way from Dallas, Texas, from Lisa. Lisa writes, "Hi, Betsy. I recently purchased a dresser from CB2, which I love, but I think it could use more interesting knobs. I definitely have an eclectic style at times, so I'm wondering how to go about choosing. I found a few knobs, one from Wayfair, another from Anthropologie, another from Urban Outfitters, but I have no idea how to choose the shape, the style, or the size. Should I stick to boring and basic instead? Thank you." All right. What I love, Lisa, is that you've sent me some pictures. So I can really understand what you're working with here. So you've picked this 4-drawer shagreen dresser from CB2. I've used it many times. It's been around for years. I really love it. I especially love the unique faux shark skin texture, and it's got this kind of gray charcoal wash to it. It's beautiful. And it has these very geometric square knobs. Now, as some of you may or may not know, I hate knobs that are not round. Anything that's square or oval or diamond. The reason I hate these types of knobs is because when they aren't perfectly straight, and over time they will loosen, they will turn around, they will shift. Anytime they're not perfectly straight, you can clearly see it. Unlike a round knob that always looks like a circle, whether it's a little bit loose or always tight, any other shape, be it a leaf, be it fleur-de-lis, will instantly betray the fact that it's not perfectly straight. So that is why I avoid sort of irregularly shaped knobs. And it's why these square knobs might drive me crazy. Now, when I am searching for new knobs, because I regularly update kitchen cabinets with new knobs and pulls, or drawers, it could be a desk drawer. I'm actually doing my nightstand drawers right now because I love my nightstands. They're perfect size and shape for my space, but they have silver hardware, and my new bedroom has brass hardware. So I want to change them out for something brass. Let me give you some guidelines to be thinking about when you're selecting the new knobs. The first thing is that this particular dresser has a brushed nickel base. So a silver type base that's not shiny, which means that I would want to use a silver type knob. Now I'm open to it not being brushed, even though I think my natural inclination would be to do something brushed. But the examples you've shown me here, we have a few that are shiny, and then one that's a little bit more matte. So I would definitely go with the more matte. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that this metal finish that you're choosing for the knobs aligns with the metal finish for the piece itself, if there's other components that are metal. The other thing I like to pay attention to is the diameter of the current knob. I like to replicate it because the proportion is correct. It looks good, right? Which is why the company sells it this way, which is why the furniture maker designed the piece this way. So I replicate the diameter of the knob. Many times the knob is 1.25 inches. That's pretty much the most common knob size that I find when I'm replacing people's knobs, 1.25 inches. The other very important thing to look at, which people often forget, is the base of the knob. Because when you take a knob off, sometimes, especially in this shagreen, there may be an indentation from where the previous knob, the base's circumference, has kind of dug into the material. You may also find in a painted nightstand like mine that when you remove the knob, it's not consistent all the way underneath. I've had these nightstands for a while, and the sun has bleached them somewhat. And so the color under the pre-existing knob is a little bit different than the paint color now. You may also find that there's some damage under the knob, or you just never know, right? So you want to make sure that you pick a new knob that has a base diameter that's larger than the base diameter of the previous knob. That way it covers any of those imperfections that I just shared. And then lastly, and this is potentially the trickiest piece, is that you want to make sure that the style of the new knob is cohesive with the style of the piece. Now, this piece, this CB2 dresser, is very contemporary. Straight lines, very geometric, and that is why I'm not loving any of the knobs you've selected. The 3 knobs that you've shown me are all rather ornate. In my mind, they're more transitional or even eclectic. Now, I don't mind being a little bit eclectic with this very straight line, linear, geometric dresser, but I wish that this had a little bit more of that severity, so it didn't feel like you've put these random knobs on a piece and they're kind of stylistically competing with each other. So that's my thought, is that you really want to be stylistically cohesive with this piece. Otherwise, these knobs are going to stick out like little sore thumbs. The other thing, and even though this is kind of a different thing, but I mentioned earlier kitchen cabinets. A lot of times kitchen cabinets or even a vanity drawer or desk drawer does not have a pull, or I'm sorry, a knob. Instead it has a pull. And a pull is a handle, right? Oftentimes it's U-shaped. Oftentimes there's 2 holes, right, where this pull is going to be in. And when you're changing out pulls, you have a little bit more homework to do. You still want to make sure it matches the style of the piece. You still want to make sure that the covering for each of the holes where it touches the piece is going to fully cover up any blemishes from the previous pull. So it needs to have sort of a wide base in each of the areas where it touches the drawer face. But the other thing that you need to do is you need to open up that drawer, open up that cabinet, and measure from the center of the screw to the center of the screw. That's the actual size that will be listed when you're shopping for new pulls. A lot of times people measure the outside of the handle, right? From one edge of the handle to the other outer edge. But the problem is you don't want to be drilling new holes. You want to use the pre-existing holes and just find something that will slot in perfectly. And that's why you measure from the center of the screw to the center of the screw to replace a pull. Whereas with a knob, there's only one hole. So you can rest assured that it will work well. All right, everybody. Okay, something else came to mind. I don't want to beat a dead pull horse, but I feel like I need to tell you this last thing because it drives me crazy when I see this, and I see it so often. So people replace the knob, but the threaded part of the screw that's on the end of the knob that would then go through the hole is a lot longer than the drawer face. So you have all this extra kind of flathead screw sticking out beyond the back of the dresser, which means that your jewelry is going to get caught on there, your socks are going to get caught. It's just a messy look inside. Whenever I have that kind of threaded screw that's longer than the door face that sticks out, I ask my handyman to cut that or trim that so that it doesn't look so ill-fitting. Now, nobody's going to see it except the person that opens the drawer, but it makes me uncomfortable. It looks bad, and I highly recommend that you trim it. And I happen to live in a house with a built-in vanity, and it's obvious that the knobs, had that extra threading and that they did nothing with it. Even though this was totally custom and they weren't replacing it with anything that I know of, they really should have trimmed that flat-headed screw part. So that's my 2 cents there. I think I've told you everything I want to share about changing your knobs and pulls for today. A big thank you to Aton and the Embassy, who wrote our theme song. A shout out to Catherine Heller, who owns the podcast shop and is our editor extraordinaire. We also want to thank Ginny Sunasan and her team at the Savvy Podcast Agency for their help with our social, our YouTube channel, and so much more. We also want to thank Uploft, which is our parent company who supports this podcast. And lastly, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to you. Thank you so much for tuning in and for all your support.